Every 2 years, the AU administration puts in a lot of effort to produce this document, the Biennial Budget of American University. Normally, this process comes and goes without much fanfare. However, the country's recent economic challenges have led an organization called the Coalition of American University Students, better known as CAUSE, to bring issues about college affordability into the forefront. Their advocacy for a tuition freeze has led a lot of debate about the funding priorities of our university.
I think that's one of the biggest interests that isn't being paid much attention to, is the massive growing problem of just continually increasing tuition, even in times of financial hardships like we've been having in this country for the past few years.
We are the primary people who pay the bills here. We're also the primary people who sit in classrooms, who make up the community itself. Along with faculty and workers, we should have a much larger role in the decision-making process.
The student government formed a commission of some of its members to study the university budget and make recommendations to the AU administration, which were published in a report a couple of weeks ago. Although the student government decided to not advocate for a full tuition freeze, they do advocate for keeping any potential tuition increases as low as possible.
We have three main points. The first point is to increase the amount of financial aid. That is probably the focal point of our report and recommendations to the university community. The second is to limit an increase in tuition as much as possible. If the university decides to increase tuition, we want them to keep it as low as possible. And that's an if that the university will have to decide. And the third point we have is ensuring transparency. One of the things that's become clear in doing all of this research is that there is more that we think students should have the opportunity to know.
We wanted to take our recommendations beyond keep tuition low, keep financial aid high, because that is a really good policy for students. But when you get something as complicated as a $500 million operating budget, it doesn't really work in that simple a fashion.
We looked at a lot of factors. It's no surprise to anyone that the national economy is an enormous question. There are falling household incomes. Inflation is on the rise. Families have less take-home pay, and prices, well, the price of AU has risen, and that's something that we think the university should be concerned about.
Nana Ahn is AU's assistant vice president of the university budget. She says that the administration works hard to balance students' tuition concerns with the funding priorities of the university.
We are trying very hard to hold the tuition rate as low as possible without sacrificing the quality of our academic programs and the services that we provide. Student demands are increasing, not decreasing. So we are expected to do more with the limited resources that we have.
Senior Brett Atanasio, who serves as the student member of the Board of Trustees, says that the board and administration do take student concerns very seriously.
The issue of keeping tuition increases as low as possible, I think, is always a serious issue that the board and the University Budget Committee keep in mind every 2 years when this issue comes up.
While CAUSE's platform focuses on freezing the annual rate of tuition increases, the student government's report focuses on increasing a different kind of rate, the tuition discount rate.
The tuition discount rate is a TDR, and it's the most important TDR that no one knows about this university.
Not the Starrett Dining Room.
Exactly.
The tuition discount rate is the proportion of tuition that goes to directly to financial aid. So there are other sources for financial aid funding, but the majority of it comes from tuition because we're a tuition-dependent university.
Tuition discounting is one way institution can help students to fund their education through institutional financial aid program. The current policy is 29% tuition discount, and the way how it works is that every tuition dollar that university generates, university will make 29 cents to give back to students.
Student government is calling for a 1% increase in AU's tuition discount rate, which would bring it up to 30%.
And what we're advocating in increasing the tuition discount rate is we're advocating for an increase in financial aid. So 1% seems very minimal, but when you take it 1%, 1 cent of every tuition dollar that every undergraduate would pay here at American University, the actual impact of financial aid could be several $million.
It was important to us that we didn't just do a one-time increase. The reason that a tuition discount rate increase is so beneficial is because it doesn't just increase financial aid this cycle. It increases this cycle and every cycle after it, as long as the tuition discount rate is that high.
Some students, including members of CAUSE, see the SG's platform as caving in to the administration's demands.
And I think that's the biggest problem with student government, is that they tailor their actions and their responses and things like that to what they think the administration will accept or like. And they're empowered by the administration.
Student government puts in their all to really make changes that they think are best, and they try to reach out to students on some level. They just aren't allowed to have the same voice as everyone else on the board. And that fundamentally puts them in a position that they can't advocate for students. They just physically can't.
Although many students sympathize with CAUSE on their positions on college affordability, their actions have generated a lot of controversy. A couple of weeks ago, CAUSE staged a late-night protest here outside of the Glenbrook Road home of President Neil Kerwin. This led to the Metropolitan Police Department being called due to noise violations and neighbor complaints. The protest highlighted the major differences between the student government and CAUSE, not only on their advocacy positions, but their methods as well.
But pressure has to be put on administrators. The student government model does not work, because they go into a room where they're outvoted and systematically disenfranchised, and it doesn't work because there is no pressure. So we need to build pressure, and that's something CAUSE is going to continue to work to do.
That's how we're going to get it done. It's by drawing attention and putting pressure. It's not by asking the administration to do this and then sitting down and hoping that they accept.
We're not kowtowing to the administration. What we're doing is we're putting together a report based on all of the expertise we could potentially have to muster out of everyone in our organization.
In the context of this budget cycle, we wanted to make this budget cycle about working within the confines and working within the limits to do everything we could.
In their November 15th issue, The Eagle published a staff editorial disapproving of the methods used by both the student government and CAUSE. Although they stated that a tuition freeze is not viable at this time, they argued that the student government has been preemptively giving up ground in their negotiations with the administration, while condemning CAUSE's recent rowdy protests as just another flavor of the Occupy movement. I asked The Eagle's editorial page editor, Rachel Lomat, to elaborate on their position.
A great majority of the students are fighting for a tuition freeze, so student government as a whole, like whether tuition freeze is right or wrong, should be advocating for the students. So we believe they should be more focused on what students want rather than what they think the Board of Trustees will like to hear.
Despite the criticism, SG officials say they welcome the dialogue over this year's budget process.
What I love about this school, and I really love it, is that you have students who are so passionate and who know the issues. And CAUSE, the Eagle, a lot of the groups on campus that are speaking out on this issue are very passionate and know what they're talking about.
We have to recognize that we are honestly fighting for the exact same thing. There is this created dichotomy about a tuition freeze, and then we're advocating for a tuition increase that could be as completely low as possible, if it even needs to happen.
Even so, both CAUSE and the SG remain quite firm in their positions on a tuition freeze and its viability for the university.
The kind of cuts that we'd see in a tuition freeze, we think would really seriously hurt the institution. Utilities costs are going to go up. Personnel costs are going to go up, and they're going to go up at higher than the rate of inflation because of healthcare.
A tuition freeze is possible. We are going to fight for it, and I think we're going to win it. And if it does or if it doesn't get implemented, it will create a space to have the discussion about where AU stands in reforming higher education.
AU has managed to reduce the percentage of its tuition rate increase over the past few budget cycles, and the administration has indicated that they will do all they can to continue this trend.
There are many institutional priorities that we need to fund, and we will do our best in terms of meeting those priorities while holding the tuition rate and residence hall rate increases as modest as possible.
In terms of tuition, I take President Kerwin completely at his word when he says that his administration is going to put forth something historic. I think we're going to see the lowest tuition increase if it happens, the lowest tuition increase in the university's history.
The student body will continue to debate and discuss all of these issues even as the University Budget Committee continues to develop their final budget proposal, which will be considered and voted on by the Board of Trustees at their next meeting in late February to early March. Students who have an interest or concerns about the university budget process are encouraged to come to a town hall, which will be held by members of the University Budget Committee, here at the University Club in the first floor of the Mary Graydon Center. It will be held on Friday, December 7th, starting at 12:30. This has been Douglas Bell for ATV News.